Okay, so one of the reasons why I bought this Arcturus AK-12, one of the reasons is the quick change spring system they have in this gun. It makes it really easy. Like if you play at outdoor fields and indoor fields, you could adjust, you could downgrade the FPS if you're going to an indoor field. But if you want to play as like a DMR in an outdoor field, you could do that with the same gun really easily without even opening up the gearbox. So it's really easy. First thing you do is you get this tool out right there. Just this little spring-loaded pin you push in, twist that out, take it out. Then you pop the dust cover like that. You flip the stock like that. You can see right there, there's that little screw right there. You take this tool, unscrew it, and before you take the spring out, make sure that your gearbox, press the decompression button right there, make sure the gearbox is not under pressure. Screw that out. Okay, so once you have that part out, this is the spring guide right here. So those two slots, you just put the tool in like this. You're gonna push in and then twist. And watch out because it's under some pressure. Push in like that. Twist. See, it's popped out. This is your spring guide right here. And the spring guide, and the spring just comes right out like this. This is an M130 spring. And another tip when you're putting in variable pitch springs like this is you can see on this spring, the coils are tighter on this side than on the other side. That's called a variable pitch spring. And when you put this in, you always make sure you have the tighter coils on the side where the spring guide goes. So if you flip it around, it's going to be terribly inconsistent and it's just not going to work very well. Just another tip to see if your spring is good is roll it on a flat surface like that. And it shouldn't be wobbling all around. It should just be rolled nice straight like this. So that's how you know your spring is good. Okay, so here's a little comparison. This is the stock spring that came with the Arcturus AK-12. You can see the coils are all uniform. This is not a variable pitch spring. They're all the same distance apart. And then this is an M130, so you can see there's a lot more coils. The spring itself is like almost like 3/4 of an inch longer. So here's some other springs that we have. This is an M140 right here, and then I also have an M150, and then this is the M130 that I usually run when I'm playing at outdoor fields. And keep in mind, if you don't put these springs in if you have like a stock motor, because the stock motor is going to overheat. The trigger response is going to suffer because it's not going to be able to pull the spring back very well. I wouldn't upgrade the spring unless you at least upgrade the motor, because the gears in this gun are 18-to-1 stock, so the gears are hardened and stuff, so they're not going to care. The gears are good quality, and Arcturus does a good job shimming them from the factory, so the motor is pretty much what you want to upgrade if you want to put a spring like this in there. And even then, I wouldn't recommend for this gun going over an M130 if you just swap the motor in it. And there's really no reason why you need to go above an M130, because we'll show you some chrono footage of like the different springs. Because with the stock spring, it comes from the factory shooting exactly 400 FPS with 20s. And that's with the stock spring, so it shoots pretty hard from the factory. So some indoor fields you might even have to downgrade the spring to play. Like our local field, I would have to get a weaker spring than factory to pass the chrono. But these are like DMR springs right here. Alright, so we're gonna go test them. What I'm gonna do is I'm gonna put the stock spring back in the gearbox so we can get a baseline of what it shoots from the factory. And this spring is basically new, so it's basically the spring is not even worn in yet, because I didn't even play once at a field with the stock spring or the stock motor. So there's like probably like 150 maybe shots on this. So it's still fresh. So all you gotta do, because this isn't a variable pitch spring, it doesn't matter which way the spring guide goes on. See the hole in the back of the gearbox right there? Feed your spring in to try not to go in as straight as possible. Don't be bending the spring sideways or anything. You'll feel where it's all the way in. Then you take your tool like this, go in, make sure those are lined up, boom, twist. You'll feel it lock back in. It's all the way back, so it's in. The stock spring, it's not very hard, but some of the stiffer springs, it kind of gets a little difficult. And all you do is screw this back in, just tighten it up a little bit, flip the stock back, put your dust cover back on, and you're ready to go. Okay guys, so this is with the stock spring and a 3S battery, just 25C, so run-of-the-mill battery, and we're chronoing with 25s. Okay, so it shoots around 335 with 25s, and keep in mind, with 20s it shoots exactly 400 FPS. So just keep that in mind when we put the other springs in. If you chrono with 20s, it's going to be a lot higher than what we're reading, because we're using 25s. Alright guys, this is going to be the M130 spring, again with 0.25 gram BBs. This is the spring I normally run in this gun, like when I'm playing outdoor and stuff. I obviously can't run the spring in indoor because it would shoot way too hard. Alright guys, this is the M140 spring. I usually don't run this one in field, but here's what it shoots. Alright, this is the M150 spring. This is the stiffest spring that I have. And so there's not that much of a difference between the M130 and the M140, like 10 FPS. This one shoots a little, there's a bigger difference between the M140 and the M150, but I don't usually run the M140 to the M150 just because it'll increase the wear of your gun and trigger response isn't quite as fast. So I like using the M130 because it still has really snappy trigger response. The BB's right there coming out of the barrel as soon as you hit the trigger, and it still has a lot of FPS behind it, so people will call the hits really quickly. So then if you want to go an indoor, you could always downgrade the spring further than the stock one, and it'll have really good trigger response. So it's a really good system. It's kind of like HPA where you could change your FPS really easily. So hope you guys learned something and helped you decide what spring you want for your gun, and we'll see you in the next video.